Hello, I'm Dana Stevens, and this is the Slate Culture Gabfest One Banger After Another edition. It's Wednesday, October 1st, 2025. This week we'll be discussing, first off, One Battle After Another, the latest movie from writer-director Paul Thomas Anderson. It stars Leonardo DiCaprio as a burned-out ex-revolutionary forced to take up arms again after his daughter is kidnapped by his old arch-enemy. Next, we'll discuss Long Story Short, the new animated series on Netflix that comes from the creators of BoJack Horseman. Finally, we'll look at the state of the Broadway musical, which, according to a new report in the New York Times, appears much more dire than I had previously known. I'm joined today, all of us cozily in Slate studio together, by Slate senior writer Sam Adams. Hey, Sam.
Hello, Dana.
Thanks for coming up on the train to be with us in New York.
Oh, my pleasure. It's lovely to have all three of us stuffed into this tiny little room.
And also by Isaac Butler, longtime friend of the podcast and author of many good books, including the upcoming...
Yes, I turned it in last week.
Oh, congrats.
8 days ago. I now get to not think about it for 2 weeks while I await the fact-checking and copy editing reports, and which will, I'm sure, ruin my life. But it's called The Perfect Moment. The subtitle changes many times, like every day it changes, so I'm not going to give that. But I will tell you that it is about the culture wars of the 80s and 90s, or as I like to refer to them, the quaint culture wars.
All right. Well, I cannot wait to read that. If you've read Isaac's previous book, The Method, I think you know that that is a book to get in line for when it comes out.
I'm already waiting in line.
You're the first in line, just standing there.
That's right.
At a bookstore.
The bookstore will probably no longer exist by the time it comes out, but I'll still be there.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality walking shoes, which might lead to another discovery.
40,000 steps, baby. Who's on top now, Karen?
You've taken the office step challenge a step too far. Don't worry, though. Sierra also has yoga gear. It might be a good place to find your zen. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Ford Blue Cruise hands-free highway driving takes the work out of being behind the wheel, allowing you to relax and reconnect, while also staying in control. Enjoy the drive in Blue Cruise-enabled vehicles like the F-150, Explorer, and Mustang Mach-E. Available feature on equipped vehicles. Terms apply. Does not replace safe driving. See Ford.com/BlueCruise for more details.
Paul Thomas Anderson's 10th feature-length film, One Battle After Another, is also his biggest movie in scale by quite a large margin, with a budget of about $150 million, which one critic estimated is around the cost of all his previous movies combined. It's also the first film from PTA that could be classified as an action thriller, though there's a lot more going on than that. This film is very loosely based on the Thomas Pynchon novel Vineland. It tells the sprawling story of a fictional revolutionary group, the French 75, and their armed acts of resistance against a repressive authoritarian regime. This is just one notch on the dial away from our contemporary political reality. In the first half of the movie, we meet two members of the resistance who are also romantic partners, the incendiary Perfidia Beverly Hills, played by Teyana Taylor, and her somewhat less fiercely committed boyfriend, Ghetto Pat, a.k.a. the Rocket Man, Leonardo DiCaprio. During a raid on a migrant camp that the group is attempting to liberate, we'll encounter the figure who becomes the movie's villain, Colonel Stephen J. Lockjaw, played by Sean Penn. All right, so as not to give away too many more plot points, I'll just say that the second half of the movie jumps forward 16 years in time. Perfidia's and Pat's baby daughter is now a teenager, Willa, played by Chase Infinity, and she and her father are living under assumed identities in a remote part of Northern California when the dreaded Colonel Lockjaw sends his goons to kidnap Willa, thereby drawing her father out of hiding to come and find her. Let's listen to a scene from the movie. Here, Leonardo DiCaprio's Bob, which is the name he's now living under after having gone underground, is on the phone with a fellow member of the French 75, trying to talk his way out of the fact that thanks to decades of drinking and smoking weed, he no longer remembers the secret passcode he needs to get information about the location of his missing daughter.
Rise and shine.
Hi. What's up? What's up, homie? It's me again, Bob Ferguson. I don't know if you remember, but we spoke earlier on the phone. I think we had a little misunderstanding. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I was trying to get the rendezvous point for my daughter,
right.
Willa.
If you can't can't answer what time is it, I cannot give you the rendezvous point. This is a key tenet of the rebellion text. I'm surprised you can't name it. I don't know if you are who you say you are.
Okay. Well, look, maybe I can give you some information, and then you give me some information, all right? We'll just share a little information. My name is Bob Ferguson. I don't know if you've ever heard of me, all right? I was part of French 75 for years and years, all right? They used to call me Ghetto Pat, Rocket Man, stuff like that. Only problem is I've fried my brain since then, man. I have abused drugs and alcohol for the past 30 years, man. I'm a drug and alcohol lover, and I cannot remember for the life of me or the life of my only child the answer to your question, what time is it?
8:15.
Now, I need this rendezvous point. You understand what I'm saying? I need it.
I understand. And the question is, what time is it?
If you don't give me the rendezvous point, I swear to God, I will hunt you down and stick a loaded fucking hot piece of dynamite right up your fucking asshole.
All right, so this movie did pretty well at the box office this weekend. Certainly for a Paul Thomas Anderson movie, it performed incredibly well. It's being predicted that it's going to have legs at the box office because it's gotten extraordinarily good reviews and really good audience response as well. It seems like a crowd pleaser. Tell me wherever you want to start. What do you think of One Battle After Another?
I mean, I am a sort of fair weather Paul Thomas Anderson fan, I guess I would describe myself as. And this is, I'd sort of, a few friends had seen it beforehand and they had been extremely effusive about it, but that's every movie he puts out. So I was sort of, well, we'll see how this goes. I was just almost shocked, but just like how much I enjoyed it. Not that it's a great movie, not that it's smart, that it has lots of really good performances in it, but it's just like so much fun. It's so enjoyable to watch. It has this incredibly shaggy quality, as you can tell even from that clip. There was some discussion in prepping the show if we could find something shorter, and of course we can't. One thing I saw Paul Thomas Anderson say about his method and kind of looking at the TikToks that his kids there's all these little films out there done in 10 or 15 seconds. And he's like, I can't do anything in less than 30 minutes. And I think the movie sort of illustrates that quality. I mean, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It's sort of a hangout movie, but also an action thriller. So it's a lot of things at once. But it's also just this, I guess to borrow a phrase from one of Isaac's previous books, kind of a fantasia on national themes. So it is about revolution.
It's a straight fantasia on
I mean, it's
themes.
extremely,
That's the big difference between it and Angels in America.
Yes. But it's about revolution. It's about repression. It's about white supremacy and sort of, systemic militaristic fascism. And then it is just about through Leonardo DiCaprio's character, who has, as you mentioned, several different identities and names in this movie, just trying to exist in the middle of this thing as a middle-aged man whose glory days are behind him, as a single dad who's trying to figure out how to raise a biracial child, and just being too high, too out of it, too generally sort of dizzy to figure out what's going on. And he is this sort of, kind of bullet that kind of corkscrews through this whole movie. And it's sort of like a really moving, but also like an incredible like slapstick performance that he gives. And that's kind of the energy of the movie is that there's all this kind of serious and this is very dark stuff going on around him. And he is just kind of like rolling down a hill in the middle of all of it.
Yeah, I think, Paul Thomas Anderson has two major modes: big statement movie and stoner comedy. And this movie is about the protagonist of a stoner comedy being lost in a big statement movie and trying to figure out like how to be the protagonist of a big statement movie on some level. He's mashed those two modes up together. And the result is just like, if you want to know if you should go see this movie or not, I think his most purely pleasurable film from start to end. It is so brilliantly shot. Johnny Greenwood's score, I think not enough attention has been paid to how he made this score that sounds like nothing else he's ever done and sounds like a 70s Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3 style, like propulsive, percussive, brilliant score. It's really fun. The performances are great. Leonardo DiCaprio is hilarious. Benicio del Toro is like a masterclass in how to make really simple choices read. And then there's another layer that you can talk about it, which has to do with like, what does it say about our current moment? There's like the think piece layer underneath that, I think, which is also really interesting and will give you a lot to chew on. There's two weird things about it that have to do with time. And I was thinking about time a lot while watching it because I thought Anderson's manipulation of time is actually truly brilliant. The first like 45 minutes are a montage that you sort of don't realize are a montage until it's over. Unlike like a Christopher Nolan montage. It's like, here is the montage. You know, like we leap through an enormous amount of time very quickly in these incredibly effective, you know, small scenes. But the two things that I was thinking about time-wise are, it's fascinating that because of how production schedules work, we're getting our George Floyd moment movies now with this and Eddington, right? And it really is, this and Eddington make for an interesting double feature. And also, though, the other weird thing is Vineland, the novel, is about Reagan, the Reagan era, and 1968, right? And there's a weird thing that happens when you try to update the revolutionary politics of 1968 to like the 1990s or the aughts. They don't fit at all, right? And so like there is a weird thing where you're like Pynchon is dealing with actual history with a revolutionary group that's modeled on the Symbionese Liberation Army, right? Whereas now it's like this weird fantasy. It's all fantasy now. And so it all sort of exists in metaphor. It all exists in a parallel world. Which I think is a kind of wild gambit, and I'm wondering if either of you like how successful you found that gambit. I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read Vineland. I have read other Pynchon. I did think throughout this movie, and only found out later that it deviates quite radically from the novel, and really, you know, for example, the introduction of white supremacy and racism, like a major theme of this movie, I think is not a major question in Vineland, right? But it's so Pynchon-esque, and the Pynchon-esque elements come from what you were both describing as this combination of slapstick and dirty jokes, and you know, just big, broad, crowd-pleasing moments like the phone call we heard, right? Yeah, silly names that are not even Pynchon's silly names. They're separate new silly names that PTA has invented. So the combination of that layer, which is not just a kind of comic relief, but is something that sort of underlays every scene, including the action scenes, combining that with also the big idea layer that you were describing, Isaac, which I have more to say about. But then on top of that, there's also this pulse-pounding action side of it that PTA has not done before, right? I mean, he clearly loves those kinds of movies, and he cited movies like, I don't know, Midnight Run, you know, as being an antecedent of this movie, as sort of, you know, action road buddy comedy. This movie succeeds on that layer too. And that's why I think it might end up really being a runaway hit.
I mean, when the camera is surfing the waves of the road, there's a scene, I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's a scene where there's a chase on a hilly desert highway, and the camera is surfing the waves of the road. And I was just beaming. I was just like, this is just an extraordinary piece of filmmaking right here. I'm like so happy I get to see someone with this level of control make this kind of movie.
I had the same thought during that sequence as Dana, you wrote in your review, which is that it's like literally every studio would like die if you describe their would-be blockbuster as a roller coaster ride. But that actually is like a literal roller coaster ride, especially if you're like watching in IMAX and sitting in the back row, you feel your stomach.
Yeah, I think you and I were being queasy in the same screen.
Because I mean, you're going up and down these huge dips in the road, and they're shooting, I think, with a sort of a long lens and shallow focus, and like I think the camera's like 6 inches off the ground, and you just have that feeling of kind of going over the crest of the thing, and then the car starts going down before your stomach quite catches up with it, and that is. Very intentional in a lot of ways, but also sort of the feeling of watching this movie, that constant sort of giddy disorientation of, having fun and not quite knowing where you are in time, in nation, in political history. But I think he is on some level, there is this big idea layer that we keep sort of alluding to, but I also want to, just stress like how much fun it is and how much the movie is content for you and to some extent to just kind of take the ride. You can think about this other stuff if you want to, but he is also just making this kind of loopy adventure story.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I will say, one thing I wrote down here is like, it is not a subtle film. Of course, this is in my Moleskine, but subtlety isn't really his game. Like, he's never been a subtle filmmaker. But the thing about this is that like, it isn't subtle about themes of white supremacy in America as a kind of vast conspiracy of white people, like a literal, in the film, the conspiracy is literal. But at the same time, it's like, but also it's just like it's like a fun, great movie. And it does a specific kind of story that I love and that we do not see enough of, which is the spies going to ground trope. There's not enough stories that are about like the people are like, we're burnt. We have to go into hiding now. Everyone has to run, and the mechanics of how you do that. And I effing love that stuff. So it really was like candy for me. And I have similar PTA ambivalence. I would say I love half his movies. And some of his movies, I love half of them. He's a filmmaker that bugs me a lot of the time. And so I just loved every second of this movie.
This movie is a really interesting combination of sort of loose and tight. And I find that as I'm reading reviews and talking to friends about it, it's like none of us quite saw the same movie, and we all sort of caught lines that other people didn't get. There's some that kind of seem to jump out at everybody, and they're just little kind of snippets of dialogue crammed into things. I mean, if you read up a little bit on how the movie was made, it was incredibly loose production, and there are major elements of the movie. There's this essentially sort of underground Latino refugee ring run by Benicio del Toro's character, and that was just like. He was on set and they were like, hey, what should your character do? And he was like, well, what if he was involved in this thing? It's a major element of the film. And they just kind of came up with it almost on the day.
Which actually makes sense since he's so influenced by Altman. And that's a classic Altman move. You know, the mental breakdown, the singing mental breakdown in Nashville was not in the screenplay. That was Ronnie Blakey's idea that she just wanted to do it. And they were like, yeah, let's film it. And it's the centerpiece of Nashville. You know, so like that's a very Altman idea.
Well, yeah, PTA's working methods, I think, are very indebted to Altman's in the sense that he has a kind of company, not necessarily of actors, but of crew team members that he's worked with for many years and, has a lot of improvisation on set that then leads to script changes. But there's something different about this movie in that respect that he's talked about in interviews a lot, which is that it's not a period piece. For the first time in quite a while, he's not making a movie that requires special cars and special clothes. He's sort of in the contemporary world. So, of course, that makes those kind of choices much easier to make, right? You scout a new location and you say, hey, let's go over there and create a new part of the movie.
Although it is interesting how much of the accoutrements of the contemporary world are not in the movie. Like a friend I saw it with was like, when actually does the present day plotline of this film take place? Because they have phones, but no one's on them all the time. Like, it just does not actually it feels divorced from time, which sort of makes sense if you're updating a story from 1985 to 2025.
I mean, that part is sort of textual in the sense that, because it has, as you sort of alluded to, Isaac, there's this sort of like at least a subject matter overlap with the movie, like Running on Empty, about the sort of, ex-Weather Underground revolutionaries just hiding out from the consequences of their past actions. And so Leo's character is sort of advised to he has a phone, but they tell him to he's using 1G or something. It's on an old analog network that they don't scan. And that's and therefore his daughter's not allowed to have his teenage daughter who's in high school is supposedly not allowed to have a cell phone because that can be tracked. So, he contrives to
But then the dance, they're listening to a song that's a decade old.
Right.
Right. I mean, there are other things where we are in a very loosely defined present, I would say. It's like the eternal present we've gotten ourselves
Which is what the title goes to. I mean, I think that choice is really, really deliberate to not have a year that flashes on the screen at the beginning. And then 16 years have passed and now we're thinking about how political reality has changed in those years, because the whole idea, I think,
right,
and the ambiguity of the title is revolution means turning around, right? So it also means ending up in the same place. So totally. I think there's a fascinating balance of optimism and pessimism in the view of revolution.
Right. When there's a shot at the beginning of the movie, one of the few things that's labeled is there's a shot where it says U.S.-Mexico border and we see the border wall and naturally think, oh, this is about immigration now. But if it's 16 years in the past, that is at the very earliest, in the beginning of Obama. And it kind of reminds you, among other things, that Obama deported more people, at least so far, than Trump has. So it's the movie is sort of subtly underlining that these things didn't just start and they're not going to end. And there's a lot of ways of looking at the title, but one is that these battles kind of aren't, these struggles, political, personal, are not sort of ever entirely won or lost. And it is about sort of the existential condition of just perpetually fighting. I was particularly interested to hear what you were going to say about Sean Penn's performance, because it is really like right on the line. It is that there's Sterling Hayden sort of satire, but then there is also this like kind of like intense psychological quality to it, where he's doing this thing with his teeth, with his lower lip, where it seems like he's about to like kind of eat off his own face. And I feel like it's the kind of thing that should either like get him an Oscar nomination or have him like tried in The Hague. It's just incredibly like viscerally disturbing.
Yeah, you texted me about Penn's performance, so I was indeed lightning focused on. But I just thought, I was like, oh right, this is just like a Kubrick thing he's doing, and I found it delightful.
But Sterling Hayden in Strangelove doesn't get to move around as much and do action and things like that. And I just love the way that he found every single part of that guy's body is that character and is repellent.
But they both do get their essential essences stolen.
Precious bodily fluids.
They're precious bodily fluids. They are both obsessed with that.
All right. Well, there's so much more to say about this movie, but luckily we're going to get to say it in the Plus segment on this week's show. We decided for spoiler twisting reasons, and also just because it's a big, excessive, overflowing movie we knew we'd go long on, that we would make it our Plus topic for this week. So we will get back to One Battle After Another then, if you're a Slate Plus subscriber. Fall is here, and that means cooler days that call for layers that last. You can upgrade your wardrobe with substantial pieces that will keep you warm all season long at Quince, your go-to for quality fall essentials that feel cozy, look refined, and won't blow your budget. Well, Steve isn't here this week to do his usual very sincere raving about Quince. He probably would have more fall products to talk about than me, but one that I know I'm going to go back to as soon as it's chilly enough is their cashmere turtlenecks. I have them in a couple colors, a black one, everybody needs a good black turtleneck, and a wonderful sort of deep rose-colored one. And it's really, really nice quality cashmere that feels soft against your skin and doesn't pill. The style I'm referring to is the Mongolian cashmere turtleneck sweater. It's kind of a big, capacious one, but they have lots of different cuts and colors. So if you're a cashmere person and you want to keep cozy in style this fall, go to Quince and look at their cashmere offerings. Find your fall staples at Quince. Go to quince.com/culture for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada, too. That's QUINCE.com/culture to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/culture. Now is the moment in the show where we talk about business. All we have to tell you all this week is that our bonus episode, our Plus episode that always comes up separately in your feed from the main episode, is going to be a spoiler special. Once in a while, when we're talking about a big movie like One Battle After Another, we have overflow. There's so much to talk about. Some of it twists, some of it just extra stuff, that we continue to talk about the movie and offer that as our Plus episode this week. So if you are a subscriber, you will hear that separately in your feed. If you're not, you can always become one by going to slate.com/cultureplus. When you sign up, you get ad-free versions of all Slate podcasts. You get bonus episodes on many of them, including ours. And of course, you get the chance to read and to listen to as much as you like on slate.com. This is a great way to support Slate and our show and keep the world of journalism, which needs your dollars, alive. So if you can, go to slate.com/cultureplus to sign up. All right, back to the show. All right, moving on. Raphael Bob Waxberg and Lisa Hanawalt have been friends since they met in middle school. In the years since, she grew up to become a cartoonist and illustrator, and he became a screenwriter. Together, the two of them created BoJack Horseman, the animated series that ran on Netflix from 2014 to 2018. It attracted a passionate cult following and has since been placed on many a list of the greatest TV series of all time. The creator's latest collaboration, Long Story Short, tells the story not of an equine-headed alcoholic and his various anthropomorphic animal friends. Is that a fair assessment?
That's amazing. Oh, God. So good.
But
that's why you make the big bucks, Dana.
I haven't seen it. This is why I'm asking. Instead, it tells the story of a human family, the Schwoopers. That's an amalgam name of Schwartz Cooper, right?
Yes.
The two parents combined their names. This is a fractious Jewish clan living in Northern California, various locations as they grow up in Northern California. The show has a complicated temporal structure that shows us snapshots of the family's life in different time frames that range mainly from the late 90s through the early 2020s, with a couple of swoops way backward in time to see the parents' childhood in, I guess, the 1950s. Let's hear a clip from an episode of Long Story Short. In this scene, Yoshi, who's the youngest of the three Schwooper siblings, voiced by Max Greenfield, is hiding out at his own bar mitzvah to get high in the coat room with his best friend and lifelong bad influence, Danny, voiced by Dave Franco.
Swooper, today you are the man.
Is it just me? Or am I awesome at bar mitzvahing?
Dude, your davening was on point. I was peeping Mr. Leibowitz. He was kvelling like a felon.
Hey, Danny, this doesn't make us bad Jews, does it?
Please, like Maimonides never got high.
But at my bar mitzvah, I mean, you don't think we're gonna get in trouble, like, with God?
Yoshi. Wait, tell me you don't still believe in God.
No.
What are you, 6?
No, of course not. Not God, but like, the idea of God.
What?
Like a God energy?
There is no energy, man. There's no God. There's nothing.
But I just read from the Torah. I learned all these prayers. I gave a speech. If there's no God, well, what's the point of any of this?
All right, Isaac, I turn to you not only because you are the resident Jewish.
Wow, way to
token
tokenize me here, Dana.
We only brought you on for your heritage.
I feel like you and Sam are both honorary Jews at this point.
I mean, I married into it.
You married into it,
As
and
did I,
Sam is so neurotic. I
And
just feel like
you married a Jew as well?
I did, yes.
But wait, I was going to say, not only do you represent your people and their history, but you are a huge BoJack fan. And
I think BoJack is one of the greatest shows of all time. Easily the best half-hour show of this century. I fucking love this show. I like actually haven't finished it because my wife and I are like savoring it. I don't want to burn through the whole thing because there's only 10 precious episodes and I will never have time to rewatch it.
Just got a second season.
I know. I think it's brilliant. Every episode makes me cry. Every episode makes me laugh hysterically. It has many of the trademarks, if you know BoJack Horseman, of Bob Waxberg's previous work, but does not have the surreality. So, his real genius is, I think, structural. And part of what made BoJack so great is it just engages over its seasons in escalating structural gambits. Like there's one episode, there's a character who always has disastrous Halloween parties. And there's one episode that is these three disastrous Halloween parties happening simultaneously. And the only way you keep track of it is with the period of what like the joke costumes are. That's the only way you know what year it is. And in this show, the way they did it, and he said in interviews, it was because they didn't know if they were going to get a second season, so they wanted people to feel the deep history of this family. And so what they've done is they've chronologically scrambled the show. But lots of TV these days does chronological scrambling or flashbacks or whatever, and I find it's often doesn't make any sense.
Like The Bear. Like suddenly we're skipping back for one entire episode.
Yeah, it's like who gives a shit, right? But most of the episodes in this show are the cold open is set in the past. And then most of the rest of the episode is set in one time frame following one family member who then interacts with the other family members. And you feel the echoes of both of those things on top of each other. And the other thing that he is the other two things that I think are hallmarks of his material are a real antic busyness. This is a show in which like 30 people are often talking at the same time. It feels like the jokes are coming very fast. You're not going to hit all of them, but the ones that do hit land really hard. And then the third thing is like he is truly a genius at the rug pull. I think like, for example, the first episode, which is unbelievably funny, ends with this needle drop of Paul Simon's Obvious Child and a cut to the present day that is like the most depressing thing I've seen in like this year. So I just think like he's just really he and his team are at the height of their powers. I love everything about this. I love all of the characters. I think the voice performances are extraordinary. I am just totally in the tank for it.
Sam.
I mean, we're talking a lot this episode about the influence of Robert Altman, who I think is, one of the great filmmakers or artists of the 20th century. And this show has, which is, quite unusual for animation, has a lot of sort of overlapping dialogue, as you were saying, Isaac, people kind of talking over each other.
It actually is a challenge with figuring out the clip to play for this episode, because you want one that the audience is going to be able to parse just listening to it. And that's actually hard.
I turned on the captions at one point to see how they were handling it, and they just kind of weren't. Like, they just gave up on the number of, 4 people talking at the same time. So there's this incredible density of jokes, including a lot of sort of deliberately piled up on top of each other, kind of culturally specific. Your davening is on point. There's a line, I think this is after you've watched, Isaac, so I'm going to spoil a joke for you, but like Jews don't do camp unless it's summer or concentration. Yes. So it's that kind of thing. But it also, this sort of slippage through time is also very reminiscent of one of my favorite, and I think one of the less appreciated Altman movies, Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, which sort of takes place in the same location 20 years apart, sort of dissolving back and forth between them. And it has that feel. This is a show where it's very intensely wrapped up in all these familial sibling-parent relationships. And it's a show like, well, there'll be some kind of minor interaction between two siblings that one of them will kind of wildly overreact to. And then you will kind of get to the next episode of the flashback and it'll show you that this is, sort of still lingering shockwaves from something that happened between them like 25 years earlier. And something that seems very minor to one of them and very formative to the other. And they still haven't realized that in the present. And that just feels very true to how family relationships work. So it's working on all this one sort of very joke dense, funny, ping-pongy level, and on this really, poignant emotional level. And a lot of the power of the show is the way it, as you said, Isaac, like the rug pull, like it just will abruptly shift from one to the other. And you're just all of a sudden kind of, in space with nothing beneath you.
Right. Like the time scrambling allows, there's one episode where they reveal, and I won't say who it is, that one of the main characters of the show has died by the time we're in 2024, which is the present day plotline, which actually the show doesn't spend a lot of time in 2024, but that someone is going to die. And it's just in a throwaway line because, of course, it's been a couple years since they died. And you're just like, oh, yeah, well, my so-and-so is dead. And it's like, you're like, wait a second. Whoa, what? Right. And then it turns out that that's actually the emotional spine of the whole episode in a really, really brilliant way. But anyway, Dana, did you like it?
Oh, I loved it.
Okay,
I absolutely loved it. And now I feel more inspired to watch BoJack, which I was in no way resisting watching.
Right.
In fact, if anything, I'm sort of saving it for a moment when I can really binge and enjoy a TV show. But I know it's also very depressing and sad, so I'm never in the mood to start it.
It's like 6 seasons or something like that. So there's quite a bit of it.
Well, that's good to know now, having seen how much I like this one. I did burn through the entire 10 episodes. They go by very fast.
Yes.
And I wish the second season had dropped already. I think I will say that one of the things I appreciated most about it, which in an animated series surprised me, because of course with animation you can do all kinds of impossible things and people can fly and there can be horse-headed men and all of this. I appreciated just how human this show is and how its world is so ordinary and recognizable in the world that we all are actually living in, right? Like nobody has magical powers. Nobody is a murderer. Nobody is doing some extraordinary Hollywood thing, right? Everybody is just trying to get through the day. And yet there's so much story to be told and so many jokes to make about that very simple fact.
And I think that's also, I think our hats should also go out to Lisa Hanawalt. Both shows were very much conceived with her because she's in charge of the art. And she also is the creator of Tuca and Birdie, which we talked about one time when I was a guest on here. That it's a much more stripped down visual style than BoJack. BoJack is the visuals are very joke dense. The visuals are as antic as the dialogue. And they're also drawn in a sort of more highly rendered way. Whereas here it's like the backgrounds often just look like children's drawings.
I was specifically going to say that I love the choice and I wish it was made even more radically and more often. Maybe in season 2 it will be, but to depart from the kind of detailed style in which the family is drawn. So, yeah, you see this a lot in older children's books where sort of if there's a crowd of people, watching a circus or something like that, they're rendered as just sort of shapes, and more simply and more two-dimensionally than the main characters. And this show does that. Or if somebody has a dream sequence or there's kind of a fantasy montage, the animation style changes and becomes more simple and schematic. And I love all those choices.
And I also think it takes a certain amount of confidence to be like, I do not actually have to prove that I am a genius level visual artist. I can actually just do what is the appropriate vocabulary for this show.
I mean, sometimes I was just laughing aloud at the way some guy in the background looked.
Yes, they're always like sort of dangling into frame like a sock puppet or something, and
right. And then what I love about the show too is that in the middle of all this and this sort of like intense, sort of gritty kitchen sink like family dynamics, it'll hit you with just a totally ridiculous joke. Like in the 2020 storyline, there's a part about like trying to the main character's kid's school has closed and they're trying to get it back open. But the problem is that during COVID, the school has literally been taken over by wolves. Like there's a classroom that wolves just live in.
That's that whole plot line with the wolves is because they just keep mentioning it's like, and of course the wolves, and you're like, what are they talking about? And then when you realize it's literal wolves, I actually had to pause the program because I was laughing so hard.
But there's a lot of political commentary in that whole running joke about the wolves, right? Because the idea is that like everyone's gone so crazy during COVID that there's a meeting of the parents group and everybody's got their complaint and the wolves aren't even top of the list. Yeah. Right? It's sort of like, are we masking? Are we not? Are we Zoom schooling? Well, wait, what about the wild animals that have taken over the school?
I forget what the school bureaucrat says about the wolves, but it's something where like, we have a pilot study to figure out what the committee should be to decide about the wolves, which is like anyone who's dealt with school bureaucracy, it's only a little bit heightened. I will say that there's a big elephant in the room for this television show, and I'm sure they're going to address it in season 2, and I do not envy them having to address it, which of course has to do with Israel and October 7th and the aftermath. It is not necessary that every Jewish work of art talk about Israel. I want to make that very clear. I actually think that's a real burden on Jewish artists that we shouldn't have to face. But this particular family is the kind of Jewish family embedded in a liberal left Jewish milieu on the West Coast that is going to have a lot of opinions about Israel and be deeply invested in lots of different, probably contrasting ways in the state of Israel and what it's doing. And I actually think it was a smart move to ignore it for the first season because I just think there would be no way to get it. Would just be like a fucking lead weights around the ankles.
I think they either went into production or opened the writer's room in October of 2023. Right. And obviously, like, let's just make this up on the fly is not the way to deal with it.
No, exactly. And my guess would be the second season will deal with it probably like in a similarly brilliant way. But like having to deal with that before you care about the characters, it would be terrible. But I do want to just acknowledge, like, it is weird to watch a show about people who are deeply involved in the social milieu of Reform Judaism in the United States and never talk about Israel in the entire show. That is weird, I think.
I will say, though, that based on what I've seen of this show so far, it will not be afraid to go there. I'm not sure how it will handle it, but I have a feeling that that's going to be something that Bob Waxberg does go on to explore. We haven't talked about the voice work very much, except for you to say that you think everyone does a great job. Are there any actors you want to call out?
Well, I don't know about you, but as soon as I hear Paul Reiser's voice, I feel like I'm in good hands. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're just
my God.
Oh, fuck, yes, Paul Reiser.
Especially playing this kind of, right, sort of a professorial dad. I mean, please, Paul Reiser, take me in your arms.
Exactly. I don't know that because he was on a sitcom forever, on Mad About You, he's like a precision-guided missile when it comes to jokes. Like, he knows how to sell them. He knows how to sell them in character. He knows how to do them. It's really great. I actually really love the chemistry. Who knows if they were ever in the same room? You never know with voiceover. Of Nicole Byer's Kendra and Abby Jacobson's Shira, who are a gay couple. They're both Jews. One is a black Jew and one is a white Jew. And she was Jewish before. The black character was Jewish before they met. She did not convert for her. And there's an early scene where you get their meet cute, which is them arguing about how many items you can have in the express lane of a grocery store. And Nicole Byer's character gets Shira off her back by pointing out that the honey she's gotten for Passover is not kosher, right? And so she has to run to replace it or whatever. And just like all of their bickering and everything is like so beautiful and hilarious. I just love it. I also love Nicole Byer. Like, she just makes me laugh all the time. So.
That's a great character, the Kendra character. Yeah. Really, really good.
Right. Yeah. And it is with her and I think with Lisa Edelstein, who plays the mother in the family. Like, it's just a register like I haven't seen Nicole Byer in before. Yeah. And sometimes animation lets you do that. But it is just, it's an actor I already thought was very funny. Speaking of the pandemic, I've watched every season of Nailed It like a million times.
Oh my God, yes. I think that saved my child's sanity, being able to watch Nailed It every day.
Yeah, but just to know that she has this sort of nuanced, like sort of serial comic stuff in her quiver is really a thing I'm grateful to the show for pointing out.
Yeah, yeah. And Lisa Edelstein, who I don't think I've ever seen play a role that is like explicitly about her Jewishness in the way that this role is. And it would be so easy because the mother and the father, Paul Reiser and Lisa Edelstein's character, both do check a lot of stereotypical boxes of what older Jews are like, right? And gendered ones as well. But I feel like they bring a full humanity to them. Like, the mother would drive you insane to be in the same room with, but you would also totally love her, I think, at the same time, you know? The scene where she meets Avi's girlfriend and like is complimenting her and love bombing her and insulting her over and over and over again, often in the same sentence, is like, it's just really great.
Yeah, that character is extraordinary. At first, you think she's a typical overbearing Jewish mom stereotype, and then within 15 minutes, right, she's developed into this much more complex and extremely lovable full person. All right, well, we all three loved it. It's called Long Story Short, and all 10 episodes of the first season are now on Netflix, so go and watch it. Let us know what you thought at culturefest@slate.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. So I went to Saks.com for an accessory that I'm always in the mood to shop for, sunglasses. I love stylish sunglasses, particularly the classic kind of Jackie O-shaped, you know, the big, like slightly oval, dark glasses. And it's a little luxury that, you know, I can afford even when I'm trying not to shop. So I looked at some of the sunglasses on offer at Saks, and they've got all kinds of shapes, not only my favorite Jackie O's, but all kinds of fun cat eye shapes and different designer sunglasses. And just looking at them has been an inspiration for what sunglasses to pair with what outfits. But that's just my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day. All right, I'm going to kick off our next segment about the state of the Broadway musical with a quote from a recent article in the New York Times called Broadway Musicals in Trouble by Michael Paulson. He writes, "None of the 18 commercial musicals that opened on Broadway last season have made a profit yet. Some still could, but several have been spectacular flameouts. The new musicals Tammy Faye, Boop, and Smash each cost at least $20 million to bring to the stage, and each was gone less than 4 months after opening. All three lost their entire investments." Paulson goes on to give us a lot more depressing statistics about the state of the musical on Broadway. Isaac, you're our theater guy, our theater guru. I want you to, for people who are not only not Broadway heads, but just really don't follow the world of theater at all, I want you to explain, why is this such a crisis? Mm-hmm. How Broadway functions currently, right? Like, how does the Broadway musical hold up the whole thing?
So I want to, first of all, I'm not quite at the, like, there's a quote from Andrew Lloyd Webber where it sounds like he's going to like step in front of a train as soon as the interview is over. And I am actually not quite at the same hair on fire point. But that article is filled with a lot of shocking statistics, and we are in trouble. I just want to make sure that we all know that it's like, every few years, there's a piece about the death of Broadway, right? I mean, Simon and Garfunkel sing on Bookends the line, "Is the theater really dead?" in the Dangling Conversation. And that was recorded in, 1964? You know, William Goldman's amazing, but difficult to read because it's so homophobic book, The Season, talks about the Broadway musical being in crisis. That's 1973
or something,
right? So it's all, and the thing that William Goldman says in that book that has always been true, or has been true at least since then and is still true today, is that like you need to be a bit of a delusional romantic idealist to be a Broadway producer or investor. That's always been true. It's a very high risk job. It's a very high risk position. People do it because they love it. Some of these people are real assholes, don't get me wrong, but it's like people do it because they love it. They
Scott Rudin is back on Broadway this season, so yeah.
Yeah, but you know, but it's always been a risky proposition. So I'll say a couple things. Paul, to just on the calmer side, Paulson's like, no musical that opened last year has recouped its investment yet. Well, when I first came to New York in the early aughts, it took 2 years for the average Broadway show to recoup. So it had to be open for 2 years. So the fact that they haven't recouped actually is a meaningless statistic in 1 year. The issue is the size of the budgets and the size of the flameouts. So I don't know if I've answered your question, but so, and maybe Sam, you can help me out here. You know, the way that the Broadway economics work often involve needing long-running blockbuster shows because those shows are throwing off a shit ton of money. Once you have earned back your investment, you start making a lot of money. You don't make any money until then. But once once the show has earned out, you start making an enormous amount of money because it is also, if it's done that, it is still a hit, right? So every week you're making a lot of money. Not only are you making money, but of course that show is staying open and it's employing a lot of people. And those people, this might be the first big job they've had in a long time. Like it might be the first big job they've had in 5 years or whatever, right? And now you talk about a chorus member, right? You look at their wage and you're like, wow, why is this wage $3,000 a week or whatever it is? And it's like, well, because yeah, that's $150,000 a year, but that person this is their first time making money in 5 years. You know what I mean? Like that's going in the bank. So, you know, a lot, or the writer starts making money off the back end of the musical, right? Well, they probably what if they spent 10 years working on that musical? That's not rare. You know, Lin-Manuel Miranda spent 6 years working on Hamilton. And the way that he was able to do that was that he had royalty money that he was making off of In the Heights. So if you want more Hamiltons, you need more In the Heights. Do you know what I mean? Like there is a kind of, it sounds like I'm arguing for Reaganomics, which is a thing I'm opposed to, but there is a thing where it's like the current economic model requires long-running blockbusters that make producers enough money and investors enough money to hedge against the risk of new work. So if you want interesting new work, you actually have to also want, you know, frankly, garbage like Aunt Juliet, I guess. But you have to also be okay with there being successful long-running shows.
It's not unlike the tentpole movies that hold up the film industry so that you can take a risk with something smaller.
Weirdly, given how slow theater is to adopt to artistic trends, theater is actually a forerunner in commercial trends in art making. And the blockbuster thing is a perfect example of that. We have always been sort of dependent on blockbusters. And since that, and what this article is really about is it doesn't appear like that model can change, right? And if that model can't change, and now big shows have gotten to the point where they are actually too expensive to reasonably recoup. A $20 million show, that's an insane cost for a show. I know from as movies go, that's not that high, right? But then once it's open, you have to pay $1 million to keep it open, right? Because everyone has to, you know, like there's the operating costs of the show.
Yeah, every week.
Every week. It's called the nut. It's called the weekly nut. And so the price of a big, dazzling, spectacle-filled audience, pandering, enjoyable. I like some of those. I'm not trying to be critical. The cost of those has gotten so outrageous that the relatively safer bet is now gone. And what that means, and the article says this, is that we've gone from 1 out of 5 shows recouping to 1 out of 10 shows recouping, right? So, but listen, originally it was only 1 out of 5. It's always been risky. But now the amounts of money are so high and the risk is so high that it's become a far more dangerous proposition.
I mean, what's the interesting corollary to this is that, you know, last year, I think for the first time in forever, like the biggest shows on Broadway were almost all straight plays. And they were, you know, mostly led by movie stars. There was the, you know, Denzel Washington, Jake Gyllenhaal Othello, which was charging upwards of $1,000 a ticket. George Clooney in Good Night and Good Luck, which was, I think, top ticket was around $400. And the Glengarry Glen Ross with Bob Odenkirk and Kieran Culkin. And those are, you know, I think there's a lot of things that go into why those are so successful. But I mean, it is the fact that you could charge $1,000 to get to see Denzel Washington do Othello, but they couldn't do that to get people to go see Audra McDonald in Gypsy is kind of insane. Like,
yes, no, that is a very weird thing, right? I mean, the Gypsy failure is the one that shakes me to my core because that is a brilliant musical. That is the best production of that musical I've ever seen.
Incredible performance at its core.
And it's filled with lots of great performances, but you also have the greatest living musical theater actress in what is essentially widely believed to be America's King Lear, right? The fact that could not make money is like truly shocking.
That is one of those, like, if you
and universally praised. That's the other thing. The Othello was universally panned. The Gypsies universally
and won
praised.
Tonys galore.
Yeah.
That is one of those, like, as the saying goes, like, if you can't make money off that, you should get out of the money-making business.
Yeah, exactly. There's two things that the article does not mention, two shows that the article does not mention, and I think because they complicate its thesis. The first is Oh, Mary, which is not a limited run of a revival. It is a new play.
Is it a musical?
It is not a musical. It is making money hand over fist, and it appears like it will run for 2 more years at the very least. Originally it was a limited, then they extended it and it was a limited and extended it, and now it's got an open run, and they're going to keep moving famous people in and out of it, and it's going to make a huge amount of money. And then the other is Maybe Happy Ending. Maybe Happy Ending has not recouped yet because they did this really big, they took a really big risk on it, and they spent all this money to keep it open when it was flopping. Like, it was flopping for about the first month of its run, if you count previews as well. And then it found its audience, and it is now making a lot of money. Its weekly nut is estimated at $750,000 a week, which is high. I mean, it's not the highest, but it's high. But its nut is $750,000 a week, and it is currently making, hold on, let me look up the chart. It is currently making $1.2 million a week, which is about what MJ, which is mentioned in there, MJ is making, but it has 3,000 fewer seats to sell. So it is doing very well for itself. That show is going to make its money back. That show is going to make money. It's then going to go on tour, and it's going to make more money. High schools are going to do it. It's going to make more money. That is actually the season's great success story. It just hasn't hit that mark yet. But everything Michael Paulson is saying in that article about things we should be scared of is totally true.
Yeah, Oh, Mary is a really interesting case for me because I just saw it got randomly served to me on some social channel, but some person like posted their itinerary for like a long weekend in New York on some Facebook group, and it somehow showed up in my feed. But it was, big dinner every night, museum in the morning, big show every night. And the shows were like, Hamilton and Wicked and whatever. And then their last Sunday matinee was Oh, Mary. And I feel like it has sort of gotten into that. It's a great show. It is sort of emphatically queer. And yet it has somehow sort of made its way into the tourists' sort of itinerary stage as well. And that is also, one of the reasons that musicals are so expensive is because there's this huge, there's just this huge back end, there's large casts, there's bands, there's, the house, sets and things to take care of. And Oh, Mary is, I think, has 4 sort of main characters in it, essentially one set plus a little set piece at the end, which we won't spoil. But, it's a very efficient show in that way. And it turns out, having seen Cola Scola in it, it did not seem like anyone else could do it. And that obviously turns out to be wrong.
Yeah.
And it is now this thing that you can just, which is much easier to do with a straight play. You can just parachute a star in for 8 weeks and just run through that indefinitely.
And part of that is, it used to be you saw someone wearing a hat that said a play by Cola Scola on it, which is the merch they sell at intermission. You're like, that person is a cool aesthete. Like, you know what I mean? They're like, they're in the upper echelon of tastemakers. And now you're like, that guy could just be from like Cleveland here for the weekend and just like the show. I think that's absolutely true. I will also say there's the question of like, how do we bring costs down, right? That is if we're not going to abandon this model, costs have to come down. And the article explains that costs for everything have gone up, right? And I actually wrote about this a little bit for the Times in a piece about minimalist set design, that, lumber is more expensive. Steel is more expensive. The supply chains have not fully, right when the supply chains for those started to recover, we started charging tariffs for them, right? So labor is more expensive. All these things are more expensive. And it seems to me, I just want to say, the low-hanging fruit for lowering costs that will not affect a middle-class person's livelihood and will not affect the quality of the work that the audience sees is for landlords to start cutting deals on rent. The rent is
too damn high.
I was going to say, you might have heard to coin a phrase, the rent is too damn high. And the rent was already extremely high, and the rent has gone up. And I actually think, like, as a theater maker, as a lover of theater, like what the landlords are doing here is inexcusable. And it is
self-destructive.
And self-destructive. It is to their benefit, especially since many of them are also theater producing organizations, to have long-running shows in those spaces. The issue is this is the other issue, is a like very strict math problem, supply and demand thing. There aren't actually that many spaces. In the 90s, before the Disneyfication of Times Square, Broadway theaters were closed all the time. You could just be like, oh, right, yeah, that theater's free. Let's go put this play into that theater. That hasn't been true in my entire adult life. So there's a waiting list to get into these spaces and rent them. And as a result, there's like sort of no incentive to lower the rent. But it would be better, instead of going through these $20 million failures over and over and over again, if the landlords can help affect that bottom line and have a musical that's running in them for a long time, for example.
All right, well, maybe that pipeline will save us. Who knows? You can go and read Broadway Musicals in Trouble by Michael Paulson. We'll put a link to it on the show page.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
Routine. Adjective. Used to describe an individual whose spirit is unyielding, unconstrained, one who navigates life on their own terms, effortlessly. They do not always show up on time, but when they arrive, you notice an individual confident in their contradictions. They know the rules but behave as if they do not exist. Routine, the new fragrance by Miu Miu, defined by you.
Just like One Battle After Another, that went really fast. It seemed like less time than it actually was. We reached the part of the show where we endorse Sam. You came all the way up from Philly. What did you bring us from your world of culture?
I am endorsing
a tomato pie.
Yes,
a cheesesteak.
A cheesesteak with whiz and onions. No, I'm going to endorse, because we're not talking about this movie enough on this episode, I'm going to endorse seeing One Battle After Another, specifically in the VistaVision format. I know. I really did not want to be that guy, and then I saw it, and I am reluctantly in the position.
Have you seen it in
guy.
70 millimeter? Is it different?
I've seen it in IMAX. I think it was digital, but yes.
Yes, we saw it the same screening, and I can't wait to see it in VistaVision. After The Brutalist, I'm now a VistaVision convert. I love that format.
Yeah, so the short version of what VistaVision is it's a sort of essentially obsolete film format. It's 35 millimeter, but it goes through the projector sideways, so you get more surface area. It was a sort of a big deal in one of Hollywood's past attempts to, or sort of early attempts to fight the scourge of TV and make movies in sort of bigger, more impressive formats. Movies like The Searchers and Hitchcock's North by Northwest were shot at
Christmas.
Yes, and then it died in 1961. A movie has not been actually projected in that format. The Brutalist was shot in VistaVision, but was projected in various other formats.
Oh, you are a format nerd.
Yes.
I thought I had seen VistaVision, but I guess not.
Yeah, but in this, so they have there are currently precisely 4 theaters in the world that are showing it. There's one in New York, one in LA, one in London, and of course one in Boston. And it's at first I thought it was just kind of a train spotting thing, like a fun little format to check off. But having seen it at least on film, the colors of the movie are not just kind of darker and richer, but there's also like a real melancholy that creeps into it. And the fact that you're watching a movie in this essentially dead format, which has really just been revived as a promotional stunt, but it does lend it a real sort of elegiac quality that I think really enhanced the movie for me. I think the sort of regular IMAX is probably a close second, that you're getting. The movie is essentially closer to a square. It's like a 3x2, like a 35 millimeter still camera shot, rather than the sort of traditional widescreen. And it just literally puts everything in a different frame, I guess. But it just there is something really, there's like an underlying sadness to the movie that it really brought out for me, and it added something to the experience. And yes, so now I get the T-shirt and the bragging rights and everything else as well.
I mean, there's only a few theaters in the country that can project VistaVision, right? Yeah, there's only one in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were none, and Warner Brothers has set up projectors in one. But there's the Coolidge in Boston, the Regal Union Square in New York, the Vista in L.A., and some theater in London.
The Prince Charles Cinema, my friend.
There you go. Yeah,
great theater in London.
That one.
My project is to go to one of these theaters and swap it out for a DCP at the same aspect ratio and see if anyone notices, and then write it up as a double-blind study.
Yeah. So I am, with all the intolerable elitism of my privileged access, endorsing seeing One Battle After Another in its native format of VistaVision.
All right. Well, I'm sold. I'm definitely going to watch it in that format. Isaac, what do you have?
I would like to endorse streaming One Battle After Another on your smart fridge, in the little ice maker thing. You could just watch it that way. And then, if you get really close to it, it feels really, really large. No, I have a couple of endorsements. One, because we've been talking a lot about Altman today. You should probably know that if you're a Criterion Channel subscriber, there's a giant Altman collection currently on the Criterion Channel. I think it's, 12 of his movies plus 30 little short, so-and-so on Nashville or whatever kind of bonus features. It has almost all of his top tier stuff is on there and some really interesting curiosities. And I believe Come Back to the Five and Dime is on there.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
So it's Three Women, Nashville, a lot of the greats are on there. I think
Quintet is in there.
Quintet.
Speaking of classics.
Don't watch Quintet first. If you've never seen an Altman film, just skip that one. But if you want to get really into Altman, now is a great month for doing so. But the other thing that I would like to endorse is a film that is rentable currently on streaming because I think it just left theaters, and that is I guess we'd call it romantic comedy, Splitsville. Anne and I, my wife and I, saw Splitsville on a date, and first of all, it had been a long time since I'd laughed that hard, and it had been even longer since I'd seen a movie where I did not know what was going to happen in the next scene. You just have it has such a surreal imagination about its plot. It's not a surreal film. Nothing magical realist happens in it, but it is so unconventional in its ideas of what a story should be doing. The basic premise is it's about two couples, the husbands of which are childhood best friends. One of the couples is getting divorced. The other couple has opened their marriage up, and antics ensue. If you've seen the trailer, just know that nothing in the trailer is from later than the first 12 minutes of the movie. The trailer feels like it has shown you an entire movie, but that's actually only the first 15 minutes, and then weirder and weirder stuff starts happening. It's got a truly original comic sensibility. I just thought it's just a great date movie. Watch it with someone you love, unambivalently. So those are my two recommendations.
Isaac, we covered that movie on the show a few weeks ago, and I don't think any of us loved it as much as you, although we were all very intrigued by all of the surprising tone shifts that you're talking about.
There are things about it that don't work, but it's the guys who made it. It's just their second movie, and it's original enough that I'm I will give it a long leeway. Do you know what I mean? It's and it's also a great date movie. But there aren't that many great date movies.
Yeah, that movie is trying to occupy the space that romantic comedy used to occupy, and it's doing it much more intelligently and creatively than most movies that attempt to do that. I mean, I'm thinking of Materialists, right? Another Dakota Johnson starring rom-com from this year that, to me, just fell completely flat.
I will also say it fulfills what I think of as Dana Stevens' The Northman demand, which is it hangs dong.
Mm.
Remember in your review at the end of The Northman where you were like, why are there all these weird shadows? There's all this nudity in this movie. Why doesn't it? You literally use the phrase hang dong in the review of The Northman for talking about how unfair it is that the women have to get naked in that movie. And there's a naked sword fight at the end in which you see no penis.
You don't get to choose your legacy, Dana.
I remember nothing about that phrase, but I stand by it. Hang dong. All right. Well, my endorsement it's a sad one in a way. In fact, I may get choked up talking about it, but I want to endorse the work of the writer Caleb Horton, who died last week. Quite young. I'm not sure how old he was, but I believe he was under 40, right? He must have been. And he's just one of those writers who he just always seemed like an up-and-comer to me, even though one of the main things he wrote about, especially in recent years, is that it's impossible to get any work and that our industry is shrinking to nothing. But he wrote for many places. I mean, over the years, he had pieces in GQ and Rolling Stone and Pitchfork, Vanity Fair, other places. He also had a kind of his own website, blog type thing where he posted essays. And he was just a guy to me who was just... Now I wish I'd kept up with his writing more and clicked on it more to help support his making a living. But he always just seemed like somebody who was going to be around and be getting better and better and more interesting. Somebody who wrote like someone from a different generation than the generation he belonged to. I saw one tribute to him over the weekend called The Last Magazine Writer, and he did sort of hail from an era where, I don't know, maybe sort of the era of Hunter S. Thompson and, Tom Wolfe and people like that. Like a guy who wrote about big ideas, but sort of filtered through junk pop culture often. He lived in Bakersfield and wrote beautifully about Southern California, had a little bit of a Tom Waits in a diner kind of sensibility, but one that sort of, he managed to make it work. It was not retrospective in the way that he wrote, but forward-looking. Anyway, just a beautiful, truthful, soulful writer who will be very missed. We'll put a link to his own personal page, and you can explore his writing. I would recommend maybe starting with a pretty recent, it was from last March, a piece entitled Walking Through Los Angeles When the Crows Are Screaming and Going Through Your Garbage. It's just a funny, sad, beautiful place to start with the work of Caleb Worden. All right, well, that does it for this week's show. You'll find links to some of the things we talked about on our show page, slate.com/culturefest. You can also drop us an email at culturefest@slate.com. Our producer is Benjamin Frisch. Our production assistant is Daniel Hirsch. And the composer of our theme music is Nicholas Bertel. The executive producer of Slate Podcasts is Mia Lobel. For Isaac Butler and Sam Adams, I'm Dana Stevens saying thanks so much for being a listener, and we'll talk to you all again next week. This episode is brought to you by Saks Fifth Avenue. Saks Fifth Avenue makes it easy to get creative with your personal style and find the best arrivals for fall. So I went to Saks.com for an accessory that I'm always in the mood to shop for, sunglasses. I love stylish sunglasses, particularly the classic kind of Jackie O-shaped, the big, like slightly oval, dark glasses. And it's a little luxury that, I can afford even when I'm trying not to shop. So I looked at some of the sunglasses on offer at Saks, and they've got all kinds of shapes, not only my favorite Jackie O's, but all kinds of fun cat eye shapes and different designer sunglasses. And just looking at them has been an inspiration for what sunglasses to pair with what outfits. But that's just my experience with Saks.com. There's so much more to explore based on your personal style and what you're looking for. So this fall, whether you're trying out the latest fashion trends or curating a closet that stands the test of time, Saks has you covered. If you want shopping to be fun and easy, then head to Saks Fifth Avenue for inspiring ways to elevate your personal style every day.